What if what you miss isn't him? What if the echo that visits you in the night isn't a ghost from the past, but a version of yourself left behind in a moment of love too deep to understand? They told you it was just longing, that it was time to move on. But the truth is quieter and far more sacred, because you're not missing someone. You're searching for the part of you that was alive only in their presence, the one who laughed more freely, who believed more wildly, the one who saw magic in their eyes, not knowing it was a reflection of her own soul. CarlJung called it projection, the psyche's sacred mistake, the way the soul throws its image onto another, hoping to find itself. Neville Goddard whispered of imagination as creation, that we do not see the world as it is, but as we are. And so we see our soul in someone else's skin and fall in love with our own mystery. This isn't obsession, it's the spiritual grief of someone who lost herself in the mirror of another. So I ask you, what if the connection that shattered you was only revealing where you were already divided? And what if the one you're chasing in dreams and signs isn't him, but the woman you became when you loved him? Let us return to her. Piece by piece, silence by silence, there is a kind of haunting that doesn't come from them, but from you. A haunting that lives in the echo of your own voice when you spoke their name. With a tenderness you no longer recognize in yourself. You are not longing for them. You are longing for the woman you became in their mirror. That woman who felt seen without speaking, who felt desired without effort, who breathed as if love were oxygen and time had no edge, and then it ended, or drifted, or dissolved into silence. But she stayed there. You moved forward, perhaps. You smiled, you tried, you healed on the outside, but something within never returned. Something got left behind in that moment of deep gaze, when you saw yourself reflected in their eyes. They told you it was just infatuation, that it was a phase, that you were addicted to the feeling. But the truth is more subtle. You were never addicted to love. You were addicted to the reflection of your own soul finally being seen. And now? Now you search, not for a new partner, not even for closure, but for the version of yourself that bloomed in that light and disappeared when the mirror broke. CarlJung spoke of the self as a multiplicity, fragments seeking reintegration. And this, perhaps, is one of those fragments. A self that was born in a sacred encounter and now roams like a soul between worlds, like a ghost of a life that almost was. And until you welcome her back, until you sit with the silence she became, you will keep looking for her, in every eye that reminds you of his. There are men we forget, and there are those who remain, not as memory but as energy. You don't just remember him, you carry him, not in the heart, but in the silence between your thoughts, in the way your intuition feels interrupted, in the sudden doubts that weren't there before. This isn't about love anymore, it's about possession. Not of the body, but of the soul image. CarlJung called it the animus, the masculine archetype that lives within the feminine psyche. When this inner figure is projected onto a man, his presence becomes a gateway to something sacred. But when the relationship ends, the projection doesn't disappear. It stays as echo, and the echo speaks. He wasn't your twin flame. That title only served to justify what your soul couldn't yet explain. He was the screen where your inner masculine was lit for the first time. But now, this inner figure, once a gate to magic, has become a shadow, a voice that questions your worth, a presence that hijacks your feminine flow, a memory that dresses itself in sacred longing but masks the loss of inner direction. You chase him because you believe he awakened something divine. But the truth, he was never the destination. He was only the key. The door was always inside, like the moon goddess who descends into the underworld, believing she is chasing a lover, only to discover she is facing her own animus shadow, her own reflection in the mask of the beloved. His energy lives inside you because your psyche hasn't yet reclaimed what it gave away. And until that energy is no longer his, your soul will keep circling the same story, hoping to wake up where it got lost. Sometimes it doesn't appear as pain. It arrives as a dream, a face you haven't seen in years, a place you never returned to, a version of you who still waits at the edge of a forgotten season, and you wake with a weight that makes no sense to the mind. Because the dream wasn't about him. It was about time, about a chapter left open, torn mid-sentence, abandoned before the soul could understand what it had lived. These dreams, these flashes, synchronicities, and sudden stirs in the chest, they are not signs that he must come back. They are symbols, echoes from the unconscious, whispering that something within never moved forward. Not because you chose to stay, but because the rupture left no path for return. The soul doesn't want him back. It wants the life that was interrupted. The feeling of becoming that was unfolding before everything was undone. A timeline that felt like destiny, not because it was right, but because you were finally alive. But now, there's a silence, an invisible grief for a version of your life that never finished writing itself. You resist the present, not because you fear the now, but because the soul hasn't closed the door on what never ended. And so, like a book ripped in the middle, your dreams keep flipping back, searching for a lost page, not to change it, but to make peace with the one who was left holding the pen. There's a kind of suffering that wears the mask of reason, a longing not to feel, but to know, to explain what went wrong, to piece together the fragments of a story that never quite revealed its end. They call it closure, as if clarity could undo the ache, as if the right words, finally spoken, could seal the wound. But you were not only broken by what happened, you were broken by what never made itself clear, by the gaze that turned cold without explanation, by the sudden distance in someone who once felt like home. You don't want closure. You want to reverse time, to go back to the moment before it ended, to ask the question with different eyes, to love more wisely, to be loved more completely. But that moment no longer exists, and chasing its meaning becomes a trap, a loop in the mind where you relive the unsaid, where you argue with ghosts and win only silence. CarlJung warned that the unconscious does not speak in logic, it speaks in symbols. And some events were never fully conscious to begin with. You cannot decode what was born in the shadow, and so every attempt to understand, to dissect, to explain, to solve, only deepens the cut. Like Orpheus turning back for Eurydice, you reach for what you once held, hoping love can bring it back from the dead. But in turning back, you lose it again. Closure was never about knowing. It was always about grieving the unknowable. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. There are moments when the universe seems to whisper his name. A song plays out of nowhere. A number appears again and again, a date, a scent, a phrase, and suddenly your breath catches. And the heart so quietly asks, was that a sign? We want to believe these moments mean something, that the universe is aligning destinies, that love still has unfinished work in this lifetime. But what if synchronicity isn't confirmation of reunion? What if it's a mirror of where your soul is still entangled? CarlJung saw synchronicity as a meaningful coincidence, a reflection of the psyche's inner state made visible in the outer world. So when the signs hurt, it is not because they are wrong, it's because they are too true. They reveal the place within you that is still suspended in the past, the place that hasn't breathed since he left, the fragment of your spirit that still believes he was the map. But signs are not always guidance. Sometimes they are echoes, and when we misread the echo as a prophecy, we bind ourselves to illusions that were never meant to return. The compass keeps spinning, not because you are lost, but because you are still magnetized by his memory. In the storm of longing, every signal becomes a symbol, But not every symbol is an invitation to act. Some are meant to be felt. So when the signs appear, ask not, what does this mean? But rather, where in me does this still live? There's a sacred betrayal that occurs in the silence after love. The moment you realize it wasn't really him, it was something older, deeper, a forgotten image of your own soul, projected onto the first face that felt like home. You didn't fall in love with him. You fell in love with the part of you he reflected, the inner archetype, the unlived potential, the mystery of who you could be when fully seen. He wasn't the answer, he was the mirror, and now that he's gone, the reflection has shattered, and you're left staring into the absence, mistaking it for loss. CarlJung taught that we are drawn to what we are not yet conscious of. And in love, we often meet our own inner stranger wearing someone else's name. That's why it felt like destiny. Not because he was the one, but because you saw a version of yourself that had been exiled in silence. Now, without him, you feel hollow. But it's not his departure that created the void. It's the collapse of the projection. The sudden return to a world without your divine image dancing in another's eyes. Like Narcissus, it wasn't Echo he loved, but the shimmer of his own soul upon the surface of the water. He didn't complete you. He reminded you of what you had forgotten to carry within. And now, the invitation is not to replace him, but to retrieve the archetype you gave away. Longing doesn't live only in thought. It hums beneath the skin. It pulses in the chest. It waits in the breath you didn't know you were holding, because not all memories are mental. Some are visceral, energetic, embodied. You hear a song, and something tightens. A scent drifts by, and your entire body becomes a temple of absence. They said it was just in your mind, but your nervous system tells a different story. Love imprints. It leaves a frequency, a subtle resonance that continues long after the story ends. Bruce Lipton reminds us that the body is not a passive vessel. It stores every vibration, every emotional signature, especially those born in moments of intensity. So if you flinch when you pass the place where he once smiled at you, if your heart races when his name appears, it's not weakness, it's memory. Not intellectual, but cellular, archetypal. The bond may have broken, but the echo still vibrates, like a tuning fork that continues to hum, even when the other has long stopped singing. And until that resonance is witnessed, not judged, not erased, but honored, your body will keep reminding you that it once knew something sacred, even if it hurt, even if it ended, even if he is no longer here. There is a deeper truth that flickers beneath the pain. You think it's him you miss, his voice, his warmth, his presence beside you in the ordinary moments. But what if the ache isn't for the person? What if it's for the state of being you touched when love opened inside you? That soft, sacred space where time slowed, where every gesture felt like a miracle, where you were more than yourself. In his presence, you bloomed, not because he was extraordinary, but because through him you accessed a light that was always yours. Now that he's gone, it feels like the light left with him, but it didn't. It only retreated, waiting for you to realize that it was never his. It was you. The magic you remember wasn't born in his arms, it awakened in your spirit. Neville Goddard once wrote, "You are already that which you seek." He wasn't the source, he was the spark. The sacred space was never between you. It was within you. He was a visitor in your temple, a reflection on the surface of a deeper well, and what you truly long for is not the man, but the mystical feeling of love itself, that rare, divine sense of union that momentarily silences the world and makes you feel whole. To crave him is human, but to awaken to the truth that it was always you who created the sacred, that is the return. Not all things break with noise. Some ruptures happen in silence, in the invisible space where the soul quietly loses part of itself and keeps walking. But one day, often through a dream or a memory, you feel her calling, the version of you that was born in love. and buried in separation. You were not wrong for loving. You only mistook the mirror for the truth. You believed he was the light, when he was only showing you your own. So now the ache you feel isn't madness, it's memory, not of a person, but of a self you left behind when the story ended. And longing, that sacred restlessness, isn't weakness. It's your soul's way of asking, will you return to her? The woman who felt beautiful in his gaze, the woman who believed in magic, the woman who, for a moment, felt whole. She was never lost. She was only waiting for you to remember that the sacred wasn't out there, it was always inside. CarlJung taught that the psyche speaks in symbols, not facts, and what we feel most deeply often points us inward, toward reintegration. Neville Goddard whispered that you are already that which you seek, but to know this, you must stop searching for her reflection in his eyes. You must feel the wound, you must hear the echo, and then, like light slowly returning to a forgotten room, you remember, you are the temple, you are the mirror. And the self you thought was lost has been waiting in your silence all along. If you made it this far, comment, Estoy despierta. Let us awaken together. Let us remember, piece by piece, who we truly are.